Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's Catheta webinar. We are coming to you live on March 20th, 2025. For anybody who is an NLC webinar first timer here today, know that our Catheta webinars get their name from the Greek word for learning. And today you're going to be learning about how grant professionals are superheroes. Your instructor is Diane Leonard, who is president of DH Leonard Consulting and Grant Writing Services. My name is Brooke Warrington. I'm the Training and Development Specialist here at the Native Learning Center. We're also grateful that you could join us this afternoon or this morning, depending on where you are. If you could follow along while I read the disclaimer aloud. This webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. We do also have our copyright infringement law printed here. So this is just a friendly reminder that the webinar materials are protected by copyright, trademark, trade secret, and other intellectual property laws. Anytime you log in the future, know that you can access all of the webinar content, slides, recordings, different webinars that you maybe missed along the way. That can all be found in the courses section here on the website. And if you are a first time here, know that anytime we have a webinar in the future, now that you've been registered for the website, you'll just log in at the time that the webinar is actually happening, and you will see that green banner at the top of the screen. You'll click on it, and that's how you'll join us. We do ask that you typically join with listen-only capabilities, just because it cuts down on any audio feedback. If you join and you realize that the sound is coming out of the wrong speaker, you can click on the little phone icon down at the bottom of your screen, and it'll bring up a list of your speaker and your mic devices. You can select the one that you actually want to be using. There are different ways to interact with today's webinar. If you did join with your mic enabled, no worries. You can always just click down there on the microphone button to mute yourself. We typically use the public chat feature. So if you have any questions, any comments, any tech support issues, especially any kind of questions that are asked or polling that's asked by the instructor, you can always include your answer there in that chat box. Just type in what you want to say or ask, and you can hit enter, or you can click on that little paper airplane icon, and that will submit it so that you can see it. There are a list of links in the public chat for you. I think I actually maybe, oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I actually forgot to put those in there today, but I'm putting them in right now. So you have access to a copy of today's slides. There's other helpful ones in there, like today's webinar feedback survey, some links that are found throughout today's presentation. And I am going to go ahead and put the presentation slides link into the chat box for you right now. So if you haven't already opened those up, the link is available for you right there, and it'll take you to a PDF of the slides. Before we get started, if y'all want to take a moment to test out the public chat, you could let us know what your name is, where you're tuning in from, your work or your role in Indian country that's led you to today's webinar, and your tribal affiliation if you have one. And while y'all are doing the public chat, just a little final note that if you do click on anything on this red menu panel that's on the far left of your screen, know that it will take you to whatever it is that you've clicked on. It'll pull you out of the webinar and it'll take you there. But if that happens, don't worry, you can just click on that green banner at the top of the screen once again, and it will bring you right back in. All right, folks, while you're introducing yourselves in the chat, it is with great pleasure that I introduce your webinar instructor for today, Diane Leonard. And Diane, I am going to hand it off to you now.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Brooke. And hello, everyone. So excited to be with you again today. Love talking about all things grants. Absolutely one of my favorite things. Brooke can attest to that. And, you know, when I think about grants and when I think about what it is that our work is like as grant writers, grant professionals, this phrase comes to mind. I've heard it in jest in conversations, but I think it's actually an appropriate and empowering phrase to think about for the work that we do, and I'm going to explain why, and why it's very different to me than a statement saying that we're magicians. We might like magic, maybe on the side as a personal hobby, but in the professional role, we're not magicians, but absolutely, I think each and every one of us is a superhero. I recognize a few of your names, and hello, it's so good to see you again. Thanks for joining us for another grant writing webinar with the Native Learning Center. For those that don't know me, I'm Diane Leonard, and I'm the president and owner of D.H. Leonard Consulting, as Brooke mentioned, and I do indeed love all things grants. I've been doing grant-related work my entire professional career. Even before I had left college, I was doing fundraising-related work, internships and fellowships, and really narrowed in on the grant portion of fundraising, first as a grant maker for the Michigan Women's Foundation, and then have been on the grant seeking side now for more than 20 years, going on close to 25, and truly love all things grants. I think each of us has very winding paths that bring us to this field. I want you to think about and maybe reflect back on your winding path as well. You don't have to share that winding path and the steps that brought you to the grant field in the chat box. No pressure to do so. But I want you to take a moment to reflect on that winding path now, because your journey, which is incredibly unique to each of you, is going to give some clues, I think, for what will make you a superhero. And that I do want you to share about in a little bit. When we think about our time together today, I could talk grants all day. We don't have all day. We have an hour and a half to talk about grants and specifically what it is. What are your skill sets that make you a superhero? We're going to talk about how it is that you measure your value and how the way you measure your value is likely tied to some of your own superhero powers. We're going to talk a little bit about goals. Some of you may have done that in some related sessions with me here at the Native Learning Center, but we're going to talk about it from the perspective of our superpowers today. So really putting you, not your organization, front and center in that conversation. And yes, we'll have a formal Q&A at the end of our time, but I do really love to have questions in the chat box as they come up. Today, I'm hoping that you are hydrated and snacked, maybe caffeinated if that is your choice. For me, it certainly is. I had my fantastic cup of fresh ground brewed coffee this morning, and I have since had a delightful hot mug of vanilla chai tea. It was perfect. So I've got the absolute perfect level of caffeination for me today. I'm hoping you're somewhere in the good to great stage in terms of hydration, food, and caffeination, so that you are ready to be in the chat box with us today as well. And to get us warmed up a little bit, if you are willing to share, it could be professional or personal, I'm not going to put a boundary on it. What are you most excited about this month? If you want to share that in the chat box, a word, a phrase, I'll give you a moment to type that. I will tell you that myself, the fact that I live in far, far, far upstate New York in the Thousand Islands, so right at the Canadian and New York border, I am most excited about the fact that spring is here. And with that comes the icebreaker. The Coast Guard icebreaking ship comes through the St. Lawrence River, and that is always a beautiful visual indicator that we're going to have some warmer days ahead. And I missed it actually going by our tiny town on the river, so I didn't get to see it in person this year, but oh, that ship is just what makes me the most excited about March every year that I've lived here. Maybe you're excited about a deadline that you're about to be able to put behind you in terms of an application. Maybe you've got an upcoming day off. Maybe it's about a great dinner reservation you've got coming up with friends or family. It's all right if you're not typing it into the chat, but I hope that you take a moment to reflect on what it is that you're excited about that's coming up for you, whether personally or professionally. In our time together today, I want to put you front and center. Oftentimes, as grant writers, as grant professionals, we are the unsung hero. We are the quiet one behind the scenes, doing the work of the writing, doing the work of pulling the things together that will ultimately help to secure the grant revenue that our organization or our tribal organization, our community need. Today, I want you to think about, recognize, embrace, and celebrate the difference that you are making, and that truly it is your unique skills and, as we're going to say, superpowers that you bring to your team, that's what makes grants successful and sustainable in your organization. Your individual contribution is incredible. It would be wonderful if you are willing to let me know how long, so any unit of time, it could be minutes, weeks, hours, years, how long you have been working with grants in some capacity. If you could go ahead and let me know, again, maybe it's a few weeks, months, years, could you let me know how long you have been working with grants? Whether you are just getting started, somewhere mid-career, or I like to say seasoned professional, that's what I use with some of my friends that have been in the field as long as I have. It doesn't matter how long you've been in the field. The superpowers that you're going to bring to your team are often there and sometimes just need a little bit of skill building, a little bit of practice, if you will, to ensure that we're using our superpowers in the best way possible. I'm wondering if anyone knew that just, shy of 2 weeks ago, there was a big online grant summit called Learn Grants in early celebration of International Grant Professionals Day. Did you know that there was International Grant Professionals Day? That's an annual event celebrating the work just like ours? Yep. Every year, the second Friday in March. Can you let me know if any of you were aware of International Grant Professionals Day? Maybe Y for yes, N for no. It is absolutely a fantastic professional holiday. Strongly encourage putting it on your calendar. Again, second Friday of March each and every year. But the event that happened 1 week before as a pre-celebration to get folks excited, well, that event, I've just put the link to it in the chat box. It's free every year, and thousands of grant professionals or nonprofit professionals that have to write grants come together to celebrate exactly what we're talking about today. To talk about the fact that each and every one of us is uniquely a superhero in the skills and the perspective and the background that we bring to our team as we're trying to write the most highly competitive application possible. So if you're looking for a little bit of inspiration from other superheroes and their skills, these are some amazing folks to connect with. Almost every single one of them, it might be all, are on LinkedIn. They love to connect. They love to share resources. These little nuggets that they're sharing about their strength, about their superpower, 10 minutes long. So a nice, easy snippet in terms of some extra professional development if there's a topic there that one of those superheroes is talking about to help you. And I do hope that you just went onto your calendar for 2026 and you marked down International Grant Professionals Day, IGPD for short, so that you remember to celebrate yourself next year. So what are your superhero skills? What are your superpowers? Before I show you what I think some options might be, I would love for you to brainstorm and share with me in the chat box. What is, or what do you think is, one of your current superpowers that you bring to grants for your tribal organization? I know this can feel awkward. I'm asking for you to humble brag about yourself. But when you're asked for it, that's the perfect time to do it, right? This is the moment. In the chat box, I would love to have words, a phrase. What is it that you think is an awesome, unique quality, skill, superpower that you bring to your team, to your organization? We're going to walk through a number of different options, things that I've seen, things that I see are in some of my team members, things I've seen in past colleagues, things I see within friends that are within the Grant Professionals Association with me. What I really want to have you think about, and if you're willing, share in the chat box. What do you think might be some of what makes you a superhero? Cape optional. Fun eyewear optional. But the fact that you are working on grants for your tribal organizations, you're in the superhero club. You might not have used that label, you might not use it again after today, but we believe that you are here. And as I mentioned as I was getting started in the webinar, there's to me a very big difference between superhero and magician. There's a really big difference between superhero and the powers that you bring to the team and the idea that you have to do heroic efforts. I want to make it really clear that while you can bring superhero powers to the team, I'm not saying, advocating, or suggesting in any way that I approve or want to see you do heroic things like pull an all-nighter to write a grant. Nope, never. Don't do it. 0 out of 10. Don't recommend. I don't want to see you taking your laptop on vacation. -5 out of 10. Don't recommend. So I'm not advocating day-to-day heroic efforts in order to get things done. I am not advocating that you should be able to, with some sort of magic flick of the wrist, blink of the eye, that's something that we might pull out of a hat. Nope, none of that. We are not magicians either. We can't create things that are illusions. We can't make something from nothing. Not going to happen. But the idea of the superhero is that we have really unique, amazing abilities that sometimes are hidden from others. They can't see them all the time. I might indeed love the Incredibles movie. It might be true. But when we talk about this idea of superheroes, and I look in a conference room, whether it's a conference of 20 or a conference of 220, and I look out from the stage, I'm looking at a room full of superheroes. So I know I can't see you, but you can see me. So pretend I'm looking right through you, to you, through my webcam. I see in each of you superhero powers. I want to find out what might already be those powers so you can think about what you might want to strengthen. So why might you be a superhero? I believe that one superpower that is present with many grant professionals is that you persevere in the toughest of competitive situations. There's going to be 1,000 applicants for this particular process. Not a problem. I've got my water bottle. I've got my favorite mouse. I am ready to go. It doesn't matter what type of grant application we're talking about. It could be a national foundation. It could be something for a city or a state. It could be something that is federal. We are up for the challenge. How many of you feel like you have at least some of that as a superhero power? If you want to let me know if that resonates at all with you, you're welcome to. You don't have to. But if you want to raise your hand and let me know that that feels like you're up for the challenge. Not a guaranteed success, but we are willing to take it on in service of bettering our community, supporting our tribal organization and the needs for funding. I think if that resonated with you, you very well may be a superhero. Okay, so maybe you thought that could work. Maybe that wasn't it. Maybe that wasn't your superhero power. Maybe instead, it's that you have trained yourself. You have trained your minds. No, we're not training AI. We are training our own brain to think about how we tell the story of our community, how we tell the story of our own organization. How is it that we help someone who's a grant reviewer that's never learned about our organization, about our work? How is it that we get them engaged about the impact that we're creating? You're telling stories, regardless of character, word, paragraph, or page limits. The other day, our team had a little bit of a sidebar grant rant. That's what we like to call them in our chat channels. Grant rant is when you come upon something that you're like, oh boy, that was tricky. And what was tricky? The portal preview showed that it had a word count limit. So what do? You write and you test against and you make sure it's best as can be within that word limit. And then they go to put it into the portal and they'd already tested. They'd seen the preview. They knew what it said it was going to have for a limit. No. When you go to click save, it flashed a warning. It's not just a word limit. It was a word and character limit. Time to reshape the story just a little bit without losing meaning so that you meet not just word limit, but word and character limit. Right? You don't want to lose any of the great story, any of the great content. That is a superhero power, if I ever thought of one. Now, granted, I've been in grants so long that I was part of a beta group of foundations that were testing online grant applications. I apologize for my role in what has become online applications. Way back then, we were thinking it was fantastic because we were saving lots and lots of paper and postage costs and all the people time for moving around all the paper. Oh, but if I knew then what I know now about the pressure it puts on each of us to tell stories in really odd word and character limits, oof, I might have spoken up in a slightly different way. Does this resonate with any of you? Is this your superpower? Telling your impactful story in teeny tiny little boxes. Okay, maybe not always teeny tiny, but sometimes oddly shaped boxes. I'm guessing that this is indeed something that is happening for many of you. You might say, I'm not sure I want to raise my hand and say that any of this is a superpower. I've not been in the field long enough. I'm not sure if I should claim and embrace the superpower. I think you should. I also think that it's okay, unlike something like that movie, The Incredibles, where everybody had their thing. Somebody could stretch, somebody could throw ice, somebody was super strong. They had a thing. Grant professionals rarely have just one thing. Usually, they have many. So don't hold back. I'd be super excited if you agreed with multiple of these superhero powers today. How many of you are connectors? Natural connectors. You are in your community and you're like, oh, you're looking for someone to help with pet sitting while you're out of town? Okay, I know someone. Let me connect you over text later today. Or in the professional setting, like, oh, we want to apply to this grant maker over here. Let's think about who we know on LinkedIn that could help us find a warm introduction to the grant maker so that we could try and talk to them before we apply. That idea of connecting, the ability to see the way that the dots connect. Now, LinkedIn does help us. It tells us if someone's like a second connection. So we know to go digging to see who are the people that we're connected to. But connectors, those that have this as a superpower, often can see the connections and have the ideas for, oh, you know who you need to talk to? You know who I should introduce you to? You know who I think we should talk to? This is a fantastic superpower. And yes, that is a photo of a much younger Kevin Bacon. I know that that's a much younger photo of him because I've actually seen the Bacon Brothers band. Didn't know that existed until this last summer. They're playing in our little town here. But the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon joke is a real thing when it comes to this grant professional superhero power. The idea that we find all sorts of connections in our network, in our community, to help us get to grant makers, to help us connect with those who might be making decisions. Even if we're not the ones having the conversation or having the direct email conversation with those we've connected to, we're helping our organizations to find, utilize, and benefit from those connections. Do you feel like that's you? You feel like, oh yeah, I'm opening up LinkedIn and I'm like, how am I going to connect to the Annie E. Casey Foundation? Look for introductions that some of our leaders could help connect us to. Love that one. I'm always happy to make introductions. I'll admit this is something that I'm always working to build on. I'm always trying to strengthen because I sometimes forget about the power of my network, the power of each of our networks. Oh, I forgot I met that person at the Grant Professionals Association conference 2 years ago. Oh, I forgot about that conversation we had at the Rotary Club meeting 2 months ago and those folks I'm connected to. I get so busy in the moment, sometimes I forget to think about my broader network and not just those in front of me in the moment. So I'll admit, this is one I'm always working on. Well, what else could we have for our superhero power? Absolutely. Oh, wait, do I have my prop right here? No. Yes, I do. I knew it was right here in my desk drawer. Look, a little magnifying glass. I have this because before I had real glasses, every once in a while I'd be like, I think I need that for some of the tiny font. That was a clue. It was time to get glasses, Diane, right? But the magnifying glass is a perfect thing for us to consider as we think about the work we do, trying to learn more about grant makers, trying to find out who is making these decisions, who's going to be on the review committee this time. How do we do that? Databases and tools and a real strong sense of perseverance that we are going to figure it out. How many of you will not stop until you find the information you are sleuthing for? You will dig through the IRS 990 for a foundation. You will read through the corporate compliance report for the pharmaceutical company about their last year's grant making. True story, I was reading one of those today. I was like, oh, this is a lot of reading. You're like, I'm going to find the information. I know it's out there. Finding out who is behind some of the grant making decisions, who it is that's going to make the yes, no decisions. Sometimes I do. I have to say I can't figure it out. Right? It's not all required to be transparent. So sometimes I come to the end of my search results and I am empty-handed. But that determination to get the answer, to get the connection, to find out what it is that's going to happen in the process or who's going to be behind the decision making is what helps our organizations persevere in these grant-seeking environments that are increasingly more competitive than ever. All right, so no one else was talking about their magnifying glass in the chat box, but that's okay. Let's think about some of our other superhero powers. I have a different question for you in the chat box. Don't worry, you don't have to raise your hand to talk about whether or not you have a superpower. This is a word challenge for you instead, if you're willing to participate. Could you, in the chat box, use words to tell me what a facilitator does without using the word facilitate? That's a given. A facilitator facilitates. That's a circular definition. Do you have other words or phrases that come to mind for you that you would use to help define or describe what does a facilitator do? Who is a facilitator? We'd love to have some words or phrases in the chat box if anything comes to mind for you. Perhaps unbiased, maybe a coach, convener, the convener, the herding of cats, the thoughtful voice that asks lots of questions. I'm curious, tell me more. Perhaps other words as well have come to mind for you as you were thinking of my off-the-cuff definitions for what might be a facilitator. How would we describe that without using the word facilitate? Are you a facilitator? I would argue yes. You are facilitating the process, how we get a grant idea and a grant opportunity aligned and all the way through a drafting, review, and approval process and out the door. So you are facilitating the process at a minimum, bare minimum. That is some project management skill set that gets you superhero credit. But there's a second type of facilitation that many of you are likely already doing. Thinking about who the different players are and the different organizational culture and the different temperaments and the different preferences of those who are part of the group that you're working with. Asking for information in different ways, providing thoughtful timelines that abide by a particular office or a particular department's preferred timelines. All of that is with your facilitator hat on. So a grant professional often has this innate, wonderful superpower of being a facilitator for folks from different viewpoints, from different professional backgrounds, from different organizations, and therefore different organizational cultures. And taking all of those different perspectives and consolidating that into a highly competitive grant application. Whether what you're thinking about is an internal group that you're facilitating or an external collaborative group, doesn't matter. Either one, check the box. That is quite the superpower. One of my favorite things to buy books about, you can see all the books behind me. I love to buy a book. Absolutely love it. Don't let me go in a bookstore. I'm going to come out with books. But so I'm always looking for books. I'm always looking for little webinars that are going to give me tips and tricks about facilitation. And one of the things, you can't even see, like right here in front of my desk, I've got all sorts of little things that I grab throughout the day when I'm facilitating calls or when I'm on in a meeting. And one of the things that I found, and I'm just saying this so that you're aware of it, not because I get any sort of money or I'm an affiliate or anything at all, but I have these two little boxes here. I'll put them up by the screen so you can see them. One says the Unstuck box, performance improvement, 100 conversations for growth. Pretty cool. Some nice little ideas in there. But this one, the Unstuck box, the 48 models, strategies, and frameworks. This little box, well, I won't open it, but it says it's a collection of ideas to help you solve problems, be more creative, and think better. I love getting my email from the Unstuck box and seeing what sort of things they're talking about, because it prompts new ideas for me when I think about how to facilitate unique groups of folks that are cross-functional in skill and background and experience with grant applications as a whole. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to quick put the Unstuck box. I'm going to put a link to their information into the chat, because I did not give that to Brooke in advance. Again, I am not an affiliate. I get nothing for saying it. I find it to be really helpful when I think about how I'm strengthening this particular superhero skill. And then the other one that I wanted to share with you is called Facilitator Cards. And it's a similar idea because it is a deck of cards. You can keep it on your desk. Again, not an affiliate, get nothing for it. But these are cards that can be used as supportive prompts for you when you think about how to facilitate and plan and run meetings. Grant professionals, we run a lot of meetings. We're parts of lots of meetings. Gives you some ideas for how to handle unexpected situations or maybe potentially tense situations. So those are two really fun resources. They're not free, and I know that usually I try to give you free stuff or like references to cool free stuff, but I do encourage you to poke around on like their blogs and their newsletters because those are free. No pressure to buy the cards, but just something I thought that's really neat that is related to this superhero power. And if you have any awesome facilitator tips or books, because you can see that I'm always looking for more, and you want to tell me, I'd love to hear about it in the chat. All right, we have more superhero powers. We have not uncovered them all yet. Can you believe it? There are still more. Perhaps the superhero power that you have, that you are willing to embrace as maybe one of your big ones, you have the writing skills to make your application, whether it is this big or really large, stand out. I say from the crowd, from the pile of other grant applications. And when I say the pile of applications, I say with authority that every grant maker of all shapes and sizes always has more great grant applications, grant proposals, than they have dollars available. That is the reality. So the fact that you can write a persuasive application, a compelling, impactful story about your work, about your tribal community, about what's happening with your department or with your collaborative partners, so that's not just fundable, technically eligible, but that like this goldfish in the image on your screen, that it stands out. That little goldfish that is leaping to the bowl on the right, that is one standout goldfish. There is no question at all that that goldfish, that's the one that people are like, I want to take that fish home. Look at the skills he has. It is an absolute yes. And there is always an absolute yes in every pile, digital or physical. When I'm a reviewer, there is always an absolute yes. The proposal that stands out so clearly, the written work, the way that the argument was presented, the concise way the data was presented, or the way it was both in text and with a little visual element, it stands out. People don't debate about it. It might get the very top score. So by score, it's like the A plus, gets the gold star and moves on. Or in a conversation-based review, everyone's like, this one was great. Yeah, oh, you thought so too? You too? Great, we're going to fund it. Quickly gets set to the side. It's not a lot of debate, it's not any discussion, where they spend their time debating and discussing the rest of the proposals that are technically eligible but did not catch them as reviewers in quite the same way. I believe you are writing proposals that can get to that absolute yes. And that is a superpower. Is anyone here a rule follower? I don't mean as you were growing up, or if you're thinking about if you broke the rules in school or household rules. That's not the topic for today. I'm talking about being a rule follower when it comes to grant applications. There are lots of rules. What's the longest set of grant guidelines that you have ever read? Roughly. 87 pages? 96? 112? There are some long sets of rules as it relates to grants. So the fact that you can read and digest, and maybe you print it out and you highlight it, and you read it 6, 7 times. Maybe you keep it as a PDF on your computer, and again, you read it 6 or 7 times. The fact that you can take that, consolidate it, digest it, and think about how to produce something that is highly competitive and meets all the rules. I've got my yellow dingy bell for you here. This is almost, I hate to tell you that this applies to all of you, to say this one right here, but this one right here, I think this applies to all of you. Whether you have just gotten started and you put one grant application out the door, or you've put 102 applications out the door, doesn't matter. Doing this with the first application, oh, that is super powerific. How do we know that you're following the rules? Well, you get grant awards. If you are working with a grant proposal that is scored, oftentimes government proposals, they have scoring rubrics. Seeing your score is an indication of that you are following the guidelines, you are following the rules. You may even get a perfect score. To my knowledge, I have not written anything in my 20 plus years that has gotten a perfect score. I know 3 colleagues who have. I have a lot of colleagues. I know a lot of people in the Grant Professionals Association, and to my knowledge, I know 3 that have gotten perfect scores. So you definitely don't have to get a perfect score in order to be highly competitive and bring great revenue in to your tribal organization. I want to put that out there. But following the rules, telling your story in a way that meets the guidelines and follows the rules is what produces grant awards. This one right here, this is your grant superhero power. At a baseline, I encourage you to think about this as one of your superpowers. A few more, though, for your consideration. I know I was a little pushy on that one, but really, not everyone is able to do that, to digest such big guidelines and think about how, in the midst of all of these things to consider, how can I write a competitive HRSA application? Completely outside of the comfort zone for some folks. They might say I'm a good writer, but you're not just a good writer. You're able to see how you're going to tell a compelling story in a number of different and very wonky structures and formats. Now to go from following the rules almost to the other side for our superhero. This might feel a bit extreme, opposite ends. This makes me think of that, I think it was like a 1990s movie, The Rocketeer. This young child on the screen looks like they are ready to do something related to liftoff from the ground. Looks to be a nice homemade costume. Don't think that there's any potential risk for lifting off the ground here. But that belief, that daydreaming, that big picture thinking, that's an interesting idea you shared, dear colleague. Okay, have you considered how we could talk to our collaborative partner A over here about that work? Or, okay, yep, that sounds a lot like something we already do. Have you considered this? How about that? Where again, sort of like our 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon's superpower, we're thinking about what we've heard as the idea or the project or the program, and we're asking questions to think about, are we sure we have full understanding of the impact this might create, of the way we could tell this story? Let me give you an example of how this superpower plays out. I was talking with an organization the other day, and they were talking about a shortage of nurses. This is true in many, many communities. I don't want to say all, but many, many communities across the United States. A shortage of nurses. And they have a pretty unique approach to what they're thinking. And, well, there could be other people, given this funder's priority area. There very well will be other folks in this pool for the competition that are also coming up with creative ways to address the nursing shortage. They had a beautiful 3-page outline that they presented me with about the data for why this was important. They had a timeline for the plan of what they wanted to do. They already even had a pretty high-level budget ready for me. This was in the very first meeting. So as I digested all the information, I thought, well, what's going to set this apart? And there were a few things that were going to help set it apart. Their existing partnerships, which they had not highlighted or talked about anywhere, except for one tiny little line in their timeline to say, outreach to partners. And I'm like, well, tell me more about these partners and who are they and how long have you had the relationships? So I was trying to think big picture. 15 minutes later, like, oh, okay, you have some more homework related to this, but that is going to help to set you apart from the other applicants. And so we continued the conversation, and I asked a few more questions, and I was talking about their particular rate of success with retaining students and why it was so different than others in the field. And it was a passing comment. It was nowhere in the outline. It was part of the conversation. I'm like, oh, hold on, we're going to go fishing for a minute. I'm like, I want to know more about that. I don't know exactly what I need to know about that, but what sort of data do you have? Why is it different? Have you studied it at all? Again, trying to think of the big picture for what's going to make the most compelling argument to the grant maker. So maybe this is related a little bit to our sleuthing superpower, but we're listening and we're reading and we're taking part in conversations. Then we'll hear a little nugget. I want to know more about that. And I want to know more about this. And we believe that grants can do amazing things. So we don't limit what we're asking and what we're hearing and what we're trying to figure out in a deeper way when we're in these program and project design conversations. We're trying to help folks flush the ideas out as fully as possible so that we can get those nuggets that'll help us stand out in such a competitive environment. There is one more superpower to go. And I hope that you've already found a few that feel like they describe the work you're doing. But here's one more for your consideration. You have a wonderful way with words. Did any of you, when you were growing up, say you wanted to be a writer? Did anyone on the line say that? At any point, up until when you had the job you're in now, where now you have to write grants as part of, if not all of your job, did anyone when they were growing up say that they wanted to be a writer? Go ahead and let me know if any of you said anything like that. You must laugh about the things I have as little props near my desk. I know, it's so fun. I love it. It's one of my favorite things about virtually presenting, because the suitcase I have to carry when I'm going in person, it would be really expensive to check in the airlines. So anyway, what's my book? It says, "What Would You Like to Be?" by Diane. That's me. I wrote this in 2nd grade. And I said in my About the Author, "Hello, my name is Diane. I write a lot of stories." You know, it's fun to write stories. I'm like, I said that. Really? Did I? And then I said, I want to be an author. Like, really? I think writing grants is about being an author. Who knew? Long, winding path between writing this little tape-bound book in, I think it was 2nd grade, to getting into grants. Lawyer, teacher, I had lots of different ideas. I was in school for different, didn't think this was going to be the winding path. Well, I realized the power that the words I could write would have in terms of creating change and impact in communities. Oh, absolutely fell in love. So whether you feel that passionately about your words now, and that's new to you, or you've always felt that way in some way, my 2nd grade self, I guess, was pretty smart about what was going to happen. But the way you're using your words is helping your tribal organization to thrive. It's helping your community members to access services and supports. It's helping, whether we're talking sewer infrastructure, affordable housing, basic needs, hot meals delivered to seniors, whatever it is, your way with words, even when it's a super technical proposal, is what's helping to achieve impact. I get so excited when it comes to talking about superhero skills and superpowers in folks like you, in folks like my writing team, in folks like my peers in the Grant Professionals Association. Those are the somewhat combined, simmered down superhero powers that we've seen in lots of different professionals and colleagues. My team helped me come up with kind of the way we would describe superhero powers. I'm curious if you have any others that I did not describe that now you feel comfortable humble bragging about. Is there something that I didn't say here? Maybe I should have put something in there about budgets, especially matching budgets. Whew, things that have matching requirements, maybe that would have been the right thing to say. But is there anything else that comes to mind for you about a superhero power that you have? You know, the humble bragging, you're always nervous to do it in the chat box. It's okay. Let's think about it in a different way. Instead of making it about you, do you see any superhero powers in others in your organization? And if so, are you willing to give them a little love in the chat box? You don't have to do it by name, but are there any superhero powers being displayed by other colleagues within your team or within your organization? People that are with their great skills helping to make those grant applications successful. Perhaps it should have been a superpower of building logic models, writing smart objectives. Those are very technical superpower skills that some grant professionals have. When I think about others in the field, but I wanted to brag about all of my writers on my writing team, and I thought, well, I was just going to pick like 3, and I can't pick favorites. So I thought, I'll make it about my broader network. What other superhero powers do I see? This is Rachel. I've known Rachel for over a decade. Rachel runs RBW Strategy, and Rachel's superpower, grant management. Rachel's a great grant professional in lots of ways, but grant management is her superhero power. That is her biggest strength. And, well, frankly, following her on LinkedIn helps me to feel confident that there's somebody watching out for changes and things that I need to be aware of. I love being connected to her because I know that that is not my superpower, that's hers. So by paying attention to someone who so generously shares what she's learning, oh, that does help me feel a little more comfortable and confident as I build my own superpowers in that particular space. Who else do I think about as superheroes? And this is what I want you to think about within your network too. Because as you're growing and building your professional skills, those around you, so there's those around you in your team, you definitely are going to learn things from each other. Then in your broader community, your broader network, if there are folks who do work that is different than your work, that gives you a great opportunity to shadow or to learn from them. Perhaps when we think about superheroes, we want to think about who is a strong leader, who has a strong voice talking about your work. This is Siobhan Richardson. Siobhan is currently the president of the board of directors for the Grant Professionals Association. She is our big voice right now. And yes, there's the entire board of directors, and they all are a voice for us, and they're elected by the membership of the professional association. But at different collaborative and network meetings, at a lot of conferences, Siobhan, along with the CEO for the Grant Professionals Association, she has the superpower of leadership, of being the voice that is speaking on behalf of many. Pretty cool. She's also really generous in her sharing. She actually started as a corporate grant maker and then flipped to the other side, like I did. I was a not corporate grant maker like she was. I was at a public foundation. But so she's taking what she learned as a grant maker and she's brought it into the grant seeking space. But again, the voice of leadership. Now, David Lindemann, as I was thinking about which of these different awesome professionals that I connect with and get to work with for different reasons over the course of a year, I was like, who are they going to pick? Yes, our initials are the same. And so I do have a bit of bias for talking about David as a superhero. We're both DHLs. But David's superpower is really about copy editing and the way that he can help to put a fine point and sharpen the language that's being used in anything. And where I actually saw it first was in writing a GPA journal article. Oh, fantastic feedback that made the entire thing so much clearer for the reader. So much clearer. But David is not a copy editor as his primary role. Primary role is doing grant work. But that superhero skill is part of what he brings to each and every team he's a part of. Now, thankfully, yes, AI editing tools do give us all each, myself included, a little bit of a boost in terms of what we might consider for copy editing. Please never trust the AI copy editors exclusively. They don't understand tone and intent, and they still can miss errors. You still need to have strong copy editing skills. But, oh, I learned so much from getting to work with David in that capacity, and he certainly strengthened my copy editing skills as a result. So if you were to introduce yourself, maybe you're at a Grant Professionals Association conference, maybe you're at, I don't know, maybe you're at the National Grant Management Association conference. Actually, that one just took place, sidebar. It's always like March-ish in DC, if grant management's your thing. Grant Professionals Association conference is always like early November, usually end of October, but like that end of October, early November space. But so pretend that you're at one of those conferences, one of the big conferences with lots of professionals doing work like you, and you are asked to fill out a conference name badge. What would you write is your superhero power? What would be the word or phrase that you would use to describe your superpower? The way I introduced Rachel and Siobhan and David were just short descriptions, unlike my larger stories. The phrase, grant management, leadership, copy editing. What is it that you are going to write on your name badge, your placard, your little lanyard, if you were going to an event like that? What would you say? If you're willing to share in the chat box, you know I'm here for it. If you would prefer not to, that's all right. We're okay with it. But if you are willing to share in the chat box, I certainly would love to hear. I do hope, whether you type something in or not, that you are starting to, or maybe you're like fully on board, embrace that you have superhero superpowers. But even the best superheroes, in the moment, in the movie, there's always some spot where the superhero, something's not working right. Someone tries to foil them in their attempts. Things don't always go as planned. And then for some reason, there's going to be some great part of the story where they are reminded of their awesomeness, and we're going to have some sort of happy ending. I'm predicting a similar story arc for you as a grant writer or a grant professional. There may be times when you would question your superpowers. There are so many deadlines that it does not feel like there is enough coffee or hot tea or iced tea or seltzer or whatever it is that's fueling you at your desk. It doesn't feel like there's enough to help get you through it. Or maybe you question your superpowers when you get a rejection. I used to, as a grant maker, I used to write, now at that point it was a mailed letter. Thank you so much for your proposal. Unfortunately, there were more proposals that were qualified than there were dollars available this round. We thank you for your hard work and your effort put into the application. We encourage you to consider applying again in the future, and we wish you the best of luck on your project. Sincerely, Diane. What an awful letter. Oh, but it was true. There were always more proposals that were great than there were dollars available. So I was not lying. It was a factual letter, but ooh, doesn't that hurt? Did not know how much it hurt until I was on the other side, and you get those letters, or now those emails. So you might question, am I sure that these are my superhero powers? Am I sure? When that happens, whether it's because of a hard day with the deadline, or a hard day of facilitating, or because there's a rejection, what do? As grant professionals, we need to make time for our favorite things. Maybe your favorite thing is knitting or crocheting. I'm not going to say those are my favorite things. I was gifted a Wooble. Little Fred the dinosaur is currently a misshapen little green pile of crochet stitches. I think he might end up looking like a little green guy. He'll end up here on my desk when I'm done, but 3 or 4 hours in, I have a ways to go. I'm not sure it's going to be my favorite thing, but I'm determined to give it a try. But if it's your favorite thing, right? Something quiet, maybe something crafty, fine. Now this one is my favorite thing. Running. Yeah, putting on my running shoes, even when it's really cold out in far, far upstate New York. But going out, whether it's 3 miles or like I'm currently training for a half marathon, like it's going to be, I think, 8 miles on Saturday, whatever it is, making time for those things helps me to quiet the voice that is making me question my superpowers. Maybe you're like, Diane, neither of those yet. Okay, we all have our hobbies. They're all different. Maybe it's about making time for your family or your friends or your favorite colleagues, a book club. These are the things that help to refuel us as grant professionals so that we can find a kernel of optimism to remind ourselves that we are superheroes. This work is hard. I naively thought at some point that it might get easier. No, there's different challenges, different things happening around us. It doesn't ever get easier. But one of the things that when it's a hard day, maybe more than being engaged in one of your favorite things or hanging out with your favorite people, one of my truly favorite things to do to remind myself about why we do this and why our superpowers matter is to look at the impact that you're creating. Look at where people are saying thank you to your colleagues for the work that's being done. Look at what colleagues are saying to you directly as a thanks for the work that you're doing. Whatever that looks like for you, let this refuel your work. So when you think about your superpowers, each of you on the line has some different combination of superpowers. We are not like those characters in the Incredibles movie, where they only had the one skill. You probably have multiple. So how do you measure your value when you have multiple superpowers within you? You're not going to look like another grant professional. Look to the left in the virtual room, look to the right in the virtual room. You each are going to be different. You will be measuring slightly different things because of the superpowers that you possess. What I can say about benchmarking is that if you think about what people around us are seeing, they're seeing the money and then the impact that the money creates. So in our iceberg illusion, right, they're seeing everything above the surface. They're not seeing everything that's happening below the surface line, the different ways that you are focusing on strengthening your superpowers, fine-tuning and enhancing your skills. They don't see that. They don't see the discipline that it takes to sit down and write in a character-counted way every day. They don't see what it looks like to make it through having writer's block. Whew. Gives me the willies just to say the phrase. Actually, speaking of that Learn Grant Summit I put in the chat box just a little earlier today, Allison Boyd of Boyd Grant, her 10-minute presentation was on just that, how to get through writer's block. Not that you'll prevent it from ever happening, but how to get through it, how to move forward regardless of when it happens. Really great little session. So if we think about the iceberg, where people see the money, the impact that creates, your hard work, what you are training, what you are working on is what's below it. How do we need to show it? Do we need to have people see it? Is that what's important? I don't think so. When we are looking at our value, there's lots of different ways we can talk about our value. In fact, if you were with me for the metrics conversation, what was that, maybe March 6th? So just like 2 weeks ago, we were talking about metrics for success. It wasn't about individual grant professionals. It was about the organization as a whole. But I did mention this tool, the Grant Professionals ROI tool. My colleagues David Broussard and Danny Blitch, anyway, I said that all backwards, but so David Broussard and Danny Blitch created this calculator years ago, and it's still available online for free. This is one way you could put a formal metric on your superhero skill. What is your return on investment for the work that you're doing? That's fine. That's a great metric if that one works for you. But it should be a metric that you pick that works best for you. And this sounds like and looks like what we talked about 2 weeks ago. But it was in that moment, what's important to your leadership and what's important to your board. Now I'm asking you a different question. How do you define your success? What is it that is going to help you think about how you're using your superhero power? And which one do you want to strengthen? Which one are you seeing improvement in? How are you watching your trends over time in terms of the strength that you're building? So when you're thinking about this, you might, in the course of your career, write grants in more than one organization. And each organization would have reasons they would have different award rates. But you are, big picture, watching your data over your entire career. When you're thinking about what am I writing and how often am I getting partial funding versus full funding. I asked for 100,000, I got 100,000 versus I asked for 100 and I got 90. I would argue that if you say, Diane, I'm always getting everything I ask for. If this metric, you're like, I don't need to worry about it because I get everything I ask for. Amazing. This is a superhero power for you because it means your sleuthing, your research work, your relationship work is ensuring that your application is right on the nose, exactly what it needs to be, so the funder says yes. So sometimes looking at a metric and saying, I don't know that I'm going to worry about that one, is actually then, on the flip side, an indicator that that's one of your personal superpowers. Of course, your organization is going to be really happy if you're renewing funding, if you're increasing funding. I think that it might be an indicator that this is a superpower in terms of your relationships, in terms of the connections that you make with your grant makers and the conversations that you have. I'd argue that this metric, what percentage of your funding is brand new grant makers and funding sources? This is an indicator also of strong relationship building and the connection finding, and maybe the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon I had on the screen. It is also an indicator probably of some really good research skills, some superpower research skills. So the metrics that your board wants to watch, or your leaders want to watch, or your overall team for fundraising wants to watch, they're helpful for understanding what the health and the sustainability of your grant seeking program look like. But each metric by itself could be the indicator of what is your superpower. Now, percent of budget met, sometimes it might feel a little out of your control if you've got a lot of reimbursement-based grants. Usually the revenue is being recognized once the revenue has been received, not when it was billed. So sometimes I look at that and I say, I'm not sure that that's a superhero power I'm as worried about, but it depends on the organization and the types of grants you're getting. I think new grant maker relationships, there we go. There's that 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon superpower. Our number of new collaborative grant applications. Remember our little friend, the young child that was dressed like he was going to leap off the ground with a little backpack of wings and fuel? That's big picture thinking. New grant applications that are collaborative. This is an indicator that collaboration and facilitation are your superpowers. If you're like, yeah, I love this metric because we did 4 new applications last year that had collaboration involved. To which, let me get the yellow dingy bell out again. Yes. That to me says that this is one of your superpowers. Maybe Let's think back to Rachel Werner from RBW Strategy that I introduced you to on the screen a few minutes ago. Grant compliance is grant management, is grant reporting, talking about the same big picture of things. This could be your superpower. Maybe when I described what Rachel does, you're like, yes, yes, Rachel, yes, National Grant Management Association, yes. That's amazing. Post-award grant stuff, whoo-hoo, that is some rule-following stuff, right? Make sure that you stay in compliance with whatever your grant maker's rules are. Yes, that's a superpower. Absolutely. Maybe when I was describing what you do, when you actually start to question your superpowers, when maybe you've gotten some rejections or it's kind of a hard day, and I talked about thinking about the gratitude and the impact that you're creating, if that idea, the satisfaction, hearing things from your community members or your colleagues, or maybe thinking about the impact that's being created, if either of those stood out for you when I was talking about actually bolstering yourself, if you're starting to question things, that might be a really strong indicator. You're like, yes, that actually, the impact I'm creating, that is a superpower. That would not happen without your writing work, without your character-counted work. And so what it points to is the strength of the application, the way that you approach telling your story. So if the satisfaction or the impact were things that resonated with you when I was just talking about, again, kind of bolstering yourself, if your superpower skills in any way feel questionable for you on a day, I would go back and I'd think about, well, wait a second. What are the things I'm doing in my application that are leading to awards, that are leading to those positive comments, that are leading to this great impact in our community? Your words are doing that. Now, there can be a very formal piece to how you think about your superpowers. The competency skills that the Grant Professionals Certification Institute measures, for those of us that are GPCs, those can be a way that you can formally measure your superpowers. I do not propose, I will not say that you have to have the GPC to be a grant superpower, superhero individual. No, not at all. There's different reasons that some of us go for this professional competency. Often it's about elevating it to folks talking about ethics for grants and what it really means. But it's not the indicator of being a grant superhero. Absolutely not. But I'm going to explain in a minute why actually it can help with setting goals when you're thinking about what are your superheroes and how do you want to grow them, or how might you even want to add to them. When we think about what we want to add to them, I'm going to go back to that Incredibles animated film. And whether you've seen that film, or you've read a comic book with a superhero, or you've watched all the Marvel movies, I haven't, but I know a few of them. But if you understand the idea of a superhero, usually a superhero has one power. That's it. But I have said multiple times today that grant professionals can have multiple superpowers. So how do you decide what your goals will be for how you strengthen your superhero superpowers over the course of the next year? Just because something isn't a superpower for you now, well, that's fine. It doesn't mean you can't ever have that superpower. It might be the superpower that you work on developing in this next year. I find that to be incredibly encouraging for myself. Just because I'm not the best at it yet, just because I don't say it's my superpower yet, doesn't mean it can't be soon. So as you think about the upcoming year, whether you want to think the rest of the calendar year, you want to think 12 months, if you're thinking about an upcoming fiscal year, however you want to define an extended period of time, what would goal setting look like, keeping our superhero powers in mind? All right, I'd like for you to think about, and if you're willing to share with me in the chat box, what does it currently look like for you when you're setting your professional development goals for the year? What does it look like? Are you gathering like a scorecard worth of the impact, the number of proposals and your award rates, your different metrics? Are you reflecting on the things you have done this past year, conferences you have attended, webinars you have been to, events like Learn Grants that you have gone to, maybe books that you have read? Maybe you're thinking about the combination of things that you may have done to try and strengthen your professional skills. Actually, could you all do me a favor? I'm super curious. What is your favorite method? Books, in-person conference, webinar, in-person training, podcast. Could you tell me what is your favorite way to learn about something new? There's no right or wrong answer here. I hope that takes some of the pressure off. Like, I'm very curious to know. Diverse group of professionals on the line in different spots in their career. If you have your choice, you want to learn something new related to your work, what is the way that you're going to try and get that information? Podcast, email, YouTube? Let me know in the chat. I'd love to hear. I'll give you a second to do that. I need water anyway. I told you I was well hydrated and caffeinated for today. I was fibbing. Apparently, needed a little more out of the Awala. But what is your favorite way to learn? I've described how much I love books. And what's funny is that it looks like, and you can see these are all physical books, but actually there's only so much room here. And so I have very strict rules about, like, if I put one here, and I'm like currently out of space, I'm going to have to start setting stuff sideways on the top one here. Like, then I have to gift them. They have to find a new office or a new home. So usually I actually listen to everything first as an audiobook to decide if it gets a spot here. Is it really that good? Or was it that I got a nugget and I don't need to reference it again? These are all things I want to have access to on an ongoing basis. So just a little clarity about what books mean. Also, I have a Goodreads shelf, and if you want to be book friends, always happy for you to see the things that I'm reviewing and talking about. All right, well, I'm guessing that you are learning throughout the year in a variety of different ways. I'm thinking about a friend of mine who was talking about how much he loves listening to podcasts. I have sponsored podcasts as a business. Shh, don't tell them. I don't like listening to podcasts. It reminds me of talk radio, and I didn't like talk radio back when I was commuting. It's just not my thing. Sometimes they're funny, but it's not my preferred choice. But what was interesting that he was talking about is how he now knows, and this is a true AI tool. Somebody taught me this, I don't know, 2 weeks ago. The Google Notebook tool will take big documents and turn them into podcasts. But AI is reading the information, and so it's like an AI voice reading the podcast. And to prove the point, actually, this was Philip Dang of Grantable. What he did was he took a huge federal set of guidelines and he put it into this free, well, if you're in the Google suite, I guess it was free, but he put it into this tool and you let it sit and think for whatever, 10 minutes or something. And then the next thing you can do is hit play. And there were these AI voices reading the Head Start NOFA, talking about what was different, talking about the most important things not to forget. And I was like, wow, how cool is that? That if you know and you recognize what is your preferred way to learn things that are going to help you in your profession, that you could flip it from a 124-page PDF into podcast style. I was like a little emoji, right? I had learned all the things. And so now that I have said it, now I will have to tell you what it is. And it is called Google Notebook LM. I'm going to put a link to it. Not an affiliate, not a sponsor. But if podcasts are your thing for how you like to learn, absolutely the coolest thing I watched happen in this conference that was all about AI and grants. And it was a lot of it, I was like, oh, no, not that. No, not that. That's not for me. This, I was like, that's cool. I don't even like podcasts. Okay, so you've thought about what is your favorite way to learn. Now I want you to think about, well, what is it that you want to learn? Where is your curiosity going to take you in the upcoming year? I like to know what's the baseline. What is it that are your current superpowers? So something my team and I did, and you can do the same thing for yourself, is we looked at all of the competencies that the Grant Professionals Certification Institute have. And we made a super quick Google form so that like each of us on the team could rate our self-perceived skill in that thing on a scale of 1 to 5. And so we're not comparing, like I'm not comparing Maggie to Laura and I'm not comparing Krista to Laura. It is every person for themselves. They can't see each other's results. But that way they can say, oh, I'm a 3 here in my self-perceived knowledge and skill. I would like to bolster that particular superhero skill. And I like webinars. What do I want to do as a webinar to build that skill? So it helps to put some direction towards what do folks want to do and spend their time on in this upcoming year? Because there's so much to learn, and there's so much in terms of the content and also the methods that you could use during the course of a year to learn about deeper understanding of grants. So I like thinking about what is your preferred way to learn, and then of all the different skills that you could learn, all the different superpowers you could have, which are the, let's say 2 or 3 out of, if you did the skills competency for all of the sub-competencies, like I think it's like 35 different little sub-items, pick 2 or 3 of the smaller items that you would want to focus on using your preferred method of learning. Now, if it's webinars, I hope to continue seeing you at Native Learning Center, right? But there's so much content and in lots of different formats. If you want to use your time as a grant professional the best way possible, you want to make sure it's in the format that really resonates for you as a professional. But even when the year is done, actually, I would prefer that you not wait for the year to be done. I'd prefer that you think about a moment of pause, a moment of reflection, maybe every quarter. See, what have you accomplished? What have you learned? What have you tested in your new superpower by attending 2 webinars and 1 conference and listening to 4 podcast episodes? Or you read the new updated Decoding of Grant Management by Lucy Morgan, and you attended a webinar with Rachel Werner, and what were you most proud of for how you implemented that learning in your work? How did you take that and dial up the volume on your superpower? I actually, with our team, I actually have them pause and reflect on their professional development for up to 30 minutes once a month. And I calendar that time with them so they don't like sneak on through it. Sometimes it's like 6 minutes. Today, Krista and I met for her monthly check-in, and she told me about this amazing webinar. And it was free that she went to. And it was something like, Not Your Parents' Spell Checker. And I was like, tell me more about that. And what it was doing was comparing the different AI tools that are out there for copy editing. It was such a cool webinar. But that was the thing that she loves copy editing. That is one of her areas of strength. And so that was what she was so excited to share just a few things. One of the tools will let her take a style guide and compare it to documents. That is a really cool and ethical use of AI. Wow, love it. But it's little things like that, and the cadence to pause and reflect, whether it's monthly like I have my team do, or if it's quarterly. But if we don't calendar it and make it a commitment, what will happen? We'll get to the end of the year and be like, oh, yeah, we were really busy writing a lot of grant applications. We didn't do that. Ask me how I know that. That was me. for a really long time. So I'm like, wait, we prioritize the things we calendar. So set the goals in whatever way you feel comfortable. Maybe you've got a good practice for that. But it's actually the iterative moment to pause, reflect, maybe think about making a few adjustments that ensures that we really think about our ongoing development of our superpowers. Otherwise, we'll get to the end of those 12 months and be like, I mean, I learned a lot, but it was through the act of doing a lot of very hard applications, right? So there's one other little nugget that I want to add here. There is a phrase for a technique in project management called yesterday's weather. Yesterday's weather in far, far upstate New York, not predictive of today's. Yesterday was an unseasonably warm 72 degrees on March 19th. Unreal. Unreal. But most days, it's not going to go from 72 to literally 25 like it's about to be in an hour and a half. Yeah, no, not a good yesterday's weather prediction there. But yesterday's weather as a technique in project management is that you look back at the last 3 periods of time that you've gathered data from, and you use that average to think about what's feasible in the work period that you're about to embark on. So based on yesterday's weather, usually it's an overall nice average as a predictor for what you might be able to accomplish next. So if on average the temperatures outside have been about 40, well, probably planning for about 40 would feel right if you were thinking about your outfit for the next day. Sure, there's weird anomalies, like yesterday when it was 72 and children were wearing shorts to school. But 42, pretty good yesterday's weather right now in upstate New York. The yesterday's weather concept is something that you can apply to your goal setting as well, so that you don't over promise or over plan for what your goals might be, what you might try to accomplish, or undersell. So think about what's been feasible in the past, something by budget, something by time when you're thinking about your professional development, so that you can right size. You might come up a little higher, you might come a little under, but if all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to go to 12 webinars this year. I mean, Brooke and the team at the Native Learning Center are here for it, right? Like they are like, yes, come do that. But if what you've really calendared as a commitment to show up for before is 4 in 1 year, 12 is a significant increase. So look at your past performance as a way to say, is this the right size plan for me? That's what yesterday's weather is about. I could talk about superhero, superpower skills in grant professionals all day. I think it is one of the coolest things to get to help other grant professionals think about what superpowers you have and how you're going to make them stronger. Like, I've been super excited all day. I've had props, I've had stuff. I get so excited, but we only had 90 minutes together. So I want to ask that if you have any questions, you type them into the chat box now. If you think of a question or you want to follow up on anything I said about the different skills or the different resources, some things that I talked about in the chat box or the other links that are in the shared notes, by all means, you can email me at any time. I'm at diane@dhleonardconsulting.com. And if you prefer to not have anything else in your inbox, please feel free to reach out on the social media of your choice. Happy to answer direct messages on any of those platforms or respond to comments or whatever it is. But I, and actually the rest of my team, we are here to support you as fellow and peer superheroes doing amazing grant work. So thanks for being with us today. The link to the survey is in the chat box. Always appreciate your feedback. But Brooke, I don't see any questions in the chat or anyone unmuted, so I think it's back to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Diane. It's such a nice reminder in this presentation that everything that everyone brings to the table themselves. I'm going to go ahead and take presenter again. We do have that webinar feedback survey in the chat for you guys. It only takes a minute or two to complete, helps us know what's working really well, what we can improve upon, and we do share that feedback with Diane, so it's helpful for everybody all around if y'all don't mind. We hope you can join us for our next webinar. That is going to be this upcoming Monday. This is going to be a 5-day series. So this is going to be on NAHASDA procurement and contract administration. Your instructor is going to be Cheryl A. Cosley. Hopefully you can come to all 5 days. If not, come to as many as you can, and know that we will post the recordings as always. That'll start on Monday, 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, 11 a.m. Pacific, and 10 a.m. Alaska. Since you are on the learning platform now, you will not need to register each day. You'll just log in, and as long as you're logging in during that time of the webinar, you'll see that green banner at the top of your screen, and you can click on it to join in. You can access this as well as our other recorded webinars. The archive has been moved to our YouTube channel. The link for that is in the shared notes, as well as printed in the presentation slides like you see. And we hope you can check out our upcoming training events. We post about them to our various social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. If you are a podcast listener, we have our in-house produced podcast, the Hope I Think a Native American podcast. You can catch that wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you like to watch the video interviews with our special guests, we do post that to our YouTube as well. All right, it doesn't look like anybody is asking any questions in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and end the recording.